Hello, my name is Sara Kelly. I'm an ADHD mindset coach, and I come out with videos every single week on everything ADHD and the isms that pair with having ADHD. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel and turn on your notifications so that you never miss a video from me. Today I want to do something a little bit different and talk to your neurotypical loved ones if you have ADHD. So my ask is for you to watch this entire video, and if it resonates with you, send it to a neurotypical person who you love, because in today's video, I am going to give your neurotypicals tips and tricks to how they can support and help you when you come to them in need. Now, before we get into the small tweaks that the neurotypicals who are listening to this video can do to support their ADHD loved one, I just want to take a moment and give you kudos for showing up today for your ADHDer. A lot of people don't really believe ADHD is a neurological phenomenon. It's often referred to more as an excuse for being lazy or unmotivated or late all the time. And these sayings like, oh, everybody's a little bit ADHD really start floating around and confusing people who don't have ADHD into thinking that ADHD is just an excuse for bad behavior. The fact that you are here today and that you're open to listening to this video shows a huge investment in your ADHD loved one, and I just want to commend you for showing up for them today and listening to this video that has resonated with them, that they are now sharing with you. So let's get into it. Let's say your ADHDer asks you for help with something. I know that this seems really, really simple, but the neurotypical approach to offering help sometimes works against an ADHDer and the way their brain is programmed. So in this video, I'm going to give you some do's and don'ts on how you can support your ADHD loved one when they come to you in need. So when your ADHDer comes to you and asks you for support, the best thing that you can do to support them is to ask them how they would like to be supported instead of pushing your own agenda on them. A huge don't is just doing a task for them. ADHDers are notorious for keeping things in plain sight so that we remember. We might keep our bill on the counter and procrastinate on paying it in a timely manner, but that reminder, that visual cue, allows us to know that that is something that we have to get off our list. So if you're helping your ADHDer tidy up, make sure that you are working with your ADHDer to see how they want things tidied up. We are notorious for having doom piles, and that's not to say that every single ADHDer has doom piles, but a lot of us do. And to a neurotypical person, those doom piles might look like absolute chaos. But believe me, the doom pile in the corner of my desk, I know exactly where that pink paper clip is, and if it is displaced, moved to a different place, all of a sudden I'm blind and I can't see it because I know exactly where I put it last. So if you're helping your ADHDer clean up, make sure that you are communicating, you are asking them where they would like things put, and understand that their way of organizing things may not make sense to your brain, but very much makes sense to your ADHDer's brain. Do your very best to not take away your ADHDer's autonomy by asserting that the only way to do something to get from point A to point B is your way. Do your best to be collaborative in problem solving with your ADHDer. Get curious about how they do things and why doing something in a specific way makes sense to them. Now, if your ADHDer has not asked you for help, but you see that they are looking a little bit overwhelmed, maybe a little bit flustered, ask them how you can best support them. We never want to come from a place where we're minimizing one's feelings by, oh, you're overreacting, this isn't that big of a deal. Invalidating an ADHDer's feelings and how they're experiencing the world can really make us feel bad about ourselves because we have been told so many more negative things than our neurotypical counterparts. Just a really interesting stat for you. The average ADHD child by the age 10 has heard 20,000 pieces of negative feedback. So when we are being told that we're too much or we're not enough or we're lazy or we're doing all the things wrong, it affects our psyche because we're already sensitive to certain forms of rejection, ridicule, and judgment. And I know that you do not want to hurt your ADHD loved one, but by acknowledging that they have had a different experience up until this point in their life than you have, creates connection and validation. And of course, when we're invested in people and we love them, that is always the end goal. If you find that your ADHD loved one is overwhelmed, if they look like they are struggling to manage through a situation, you can ask them if you can help them out. Sometimes with ADHD, we have trouble with ordination of tasks. If your ADHD loved one is feeling overwhelmed, then offer to help them break the task down into more manageable pieces. With ADHD, something as simple as doing the laundry can feel like 10 separate tasks. And to a neurotypical person, it's very obvious the flow of how to get the laundry started to finished. An ADHDer might feel overwhelmed by the thought of, I need to go to the laundry basket and separate the clothes, and then I need to bring the clothes into the laundry room and put them in the washing machine. Then I need to remember to take them out of the washing machine and put them in the dryer. And then I need to remember when the dryer is done to take out the clothes and fold them so that they don't get wrinkled and put them away. And all of these steps in our mind, because of our executive dysfunction, can feel really, really overwhelming. It's like climbing a mountain. If a neurotypical person was to climb a mountain, they would plan out the route. An ADHDer might see a mountain and just see the top of the mountain and feel sheer overwhelm. So helping an ADHDer break down a task into manageable pieces that make sense for them and isn't overwhelming is a way that you can absolutely love and support your ADHDer. Breaking tasks down into manageable pieces can cause a sheer overwhelm, and a lot of times when we are suffering from task paralysis, task initiation, or task completion, it really has a lot more to do with us not knowing where to start, because a big task, just like a mountain, can feel really overwhelming if the task is not planned out in a way that makes sense to our brains. Another way that is really helpful to support your ADHD partner is something called body doubling. And all that is being with them in some way in person, maybe on a Zoom call or a FaceTime call, while they're doing the task that they have to do. A lot of times the motivation of just having someone beside us while we are doing the task, as silly as that might sound to your neurotypical brain, really helps us climb that mountain. It really helps us feel supported so that we can get the task at hand done. Support can also look like understanding that your ADHDer might have a shorter emotional and mental bandwidth to get jobs done than you have. And this comes down to our executive dysfunction. We struggle with our working memory. We struggle with emotional dysregulation, which means we can seemingly overreact to a situation that you would not be reactive to. The worst thing that you can say to an ADHDer who is maybe a little bit feeling emotional dysregulated or is feeling a little bit more sensitive is, you shouldn't overreact, you shouldn't be too much, you're making a mountain out of a molehill. Yes, through your lens, that might be very true, but because of our executive dysfunction, because of our ADHD and the way our brain is wired, that overwhelm, that emotional dysregulation feels really real and really big. So validating your ADHD, I see that you're overwhelmed. I see that you're starting to get a little bit upset. What can I do to help you get through this situation? Would you like to go outside for a walk? Would you like to take a break? It's really a way to build closeness with your ADHD rather than just saying, oh, well, this isn't that big of a deal. You should just get over this. And this is an easy job to do. Don't be lazy. Don't be so difficult. Don't get frustrated so easily. Those kinds of things are harmful to us. So validation of our feelings, maybe not the actual experience, is important. I'm not saying that you should say, oh yes, this job is so big and so unmanageable and oh my goodness, like how could anybody do it? Validating where we are emotionally builds connection and makes us as ADHDers feel safe to be vulnerable in your presence. As a neurotypical person, you might be able to knock off a checklist with no issues. This is not always as easy for ADHD folks, so encourage them to work in small time spurts with breaks so that they can stay on task when they need to while not draining their emotional and mental bandwidth. Speaking of checklists, which is an ADHDer's best friend, but we're so sick and tired of being told to use them, when your ADHDer does have a checklist that they need to go through, try to be collaborative as to where they want to start on the list. I'm a little bit odd when it comes to how I deal with a checklist next to most ADHDers. My philosophy is get the worst thing off the list first and then do the more fun things afterwards. To a lot of ADHDers though, that doesn't work. Sometimes in order to start that motivation, giving your ADHDer or suggesting to your ADHDer to do one of the easier or more interesting tasks on the list can start that dopamine production so that they feel accomplished, they've done something that wasn't too difficult or mundane. Our nervous systems are very interest-based, so the more monotonous jobs we are not as eager to do can build that dopamine, that validation of getting one thing done so that they will move to the harder things later. So be open to the fact that they might be worst first, best last, like myself, or they might need to do something a little bit more interesting to get into the groove and to want to continue down their checklist, which can be really, really hard for us. By allowing your ADHDer to control what works for them free of judgment, and I really want to reiterate that free of judgment is super important to us as ADHDers because we do feel judged a ton. They will not only feel empowered, but they will also produce their own little surge of dopamine by getting through a task on their own terms. Again, this comes down to having autonomy over your own decisions. ADHDers don't have the same reserve to dopamine and norepinephrine as a neurotypical person, and dopamine is that pleasure and motivation neurotransmitter. A neurotypical person can do a task and get a little surge of dopamine from doing that task, which teaches your brain to continue to do the things that give you dopamine. An ADHDer will do a task, and because our brains are so fast, we've moved on to the next project and we don't really sit in that little dopamine surge in the same way as a neurotypical person does. So I want to offer you a couple tips that will give your ADHDer a little surge of dopamine that will get them over the hill and doing the next task on those dreaded checklists. Firstly, it's important to understand that we get surges of dopamine from praise and validation, and also arguing and drama. Some of us, myself included, especially before I knew I had ADHD, would be okay and even encourage arguing because it gave me that surge of dopamine, and there are studies that support this. We struggle with emotional dysregulation as part of our executive dysfunction, so it's easy to fall into having really big feelings sometimes, and on a subconscious level, we do get dopamine from drama, even though on a conscious level, at least for most of us, we would not choose drama or arguing. So let's get back to praise and validation to help your ADHDer get their dopamine in a healthy way. To you, getting things done on a list might feel really easy. To an ADHDer though, it can be exhausting because working our way through a list requires a ton of executive functioning. So validating your ADHDer's feelings and struggles, even if the things on that list are easy for you to do, has the potential to make your ADHDer feel so good about themselves. Again, this comes back to the fact that so many of us have been criticized and ridiculed for the isms of our ADHD for most of our life. I hope you enjoyed this video today. I enjoyed making it. Thank you so much. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel and turn on your notifications so that you never miss a video from me. And if you are late diagnosed with ADHD, present as female, or believe you have ADHD, I understand diagnosis comes from a position of privilege and not everybody has access to doctors to diagnose without long waiting lists. I have a complimentary masterclass linked below this video that goes over the 5 pillars to creating lasting change if you have ADHD and struggle with your self-esteem. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week in the next video.